Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. We have Elizabeth, who is our speaker of the evening, who's going to talk about 3 pillars of effective parenting. And I think everybody should know a little bit about fun moms. If not, I can tell you a little bit, maybe towards the end, because I feel like both of you are probably fun mothers members. But let me go ahead and turn it over to Elizabeth.
Great. And, I know life is messy and you're probably doing a million other things, but it is really hard. It's really hard to give a presentation to nobody. So, how would you guys feel about sharing your visuals with me? That would be good. And I will share mine, of course. And you've disabled screen sharing, but
Did I really? Let me see. What can I do about that? Share screen.
And
Okay.
since we're such a small group here, put in the chat for me how old your kids are, and if there's anything in particular that you're wondering.
Hi.
Host is disabled screen sharing.
Oh, I just changed it so that you could.
It just did. It did.
Okay, good.
All right. Excellent. And yeah, so moms, it would be so helpful if you would put your kids' ages in, or if you wanted to be brave and introduce yourself. That would be really great too. No. Okay. All right. So my apologies for my handout tonight. It is in the chat. My I simply do not know where my PowerPoint went. I've spent a frantic half hour looking for it, and then I was like, okay, I'm just going to go with my old school handout when I used to meet in person. This is the handout that I used to use. So so here we are. Okay. First of all, I'm Elisabeth Stitt. I come to parenting coaching from 25 years of teaching. During that time, I taught kinder through 12th grade, everything except 11th grade at some point or another. But most of my teaching years were with middle school. And one of the reasons I became a parenting coach was because parents would come to me and say, "Where did my sweet baby go?" Because they're very fun, loving, nice, together, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10-year-old had turned into a tween or teen who was beginning to have mood swings and talking back and sassing and rolling their eyes at everything. Connie probably knows some of this behavior. And
Yep.
And they would go, "Mrs. Stitt, what do we do?" And my first question would be, what did you do? How did you parent your child when they were 2, 3, or 4? And if the parent said, well, we were empathetic, we offered choices, we tried to keep a lot of structure and clarity, we tried to follow through and be consistent, then I could have a conversation about what does that look like at middle school. But if they were said, oh my gosh, he ruled the roost, he was running around yelling, screaming, tantrums, we were so thankful when he outgrew it. Then I think, oh, so you never learned how to actually manage all those big feelings and out of bounds behaviors. And now you have a 12 or 13-year-old who is angry and emotional and pushing the boundaries. So those of you who are here with little kids, congratulations, because if you can't learn some basic principles when they're 2, 3, 4, and really get them down solidly, you'll be able to go back to them when your child is in middle school. And I think middle school, in some ways, getting middle school right is even more critical than getting high school right. Because if you get middle school right, there's a very good chance your kids will step into high school and take off and be fine. Okay, so clarity, connection, consistency. These really build, and you need all three pieces. What are our objectives tonight? What is the importance of identifying key values around which to focus your family policy? Why do parenting professionals get on such a high horse about being consistent? Why is that so important? How do we develop those habits which enable us as parents to be consistent? Because it's not easy, is it, to be a consistent parent? And then how do we develop expectations that increase the unity in the family, in the sense that we are a family unit, we take care of each other, therefore we are cooperative, we behave, we do what is good for the family as a whole, as opposed to just what is good for us as individuals. Okay, so our first effective parenting pillar is clarity. When you are clear about your values and about what you think is really important, that means you're not so wishy-washy. You're not flowing with the winds. You know, in today's society, there are so many parenting resources that we sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot by getting onto the internet, looking up a question, looking up the next link, the next link, the next link, and we've spent 2.5 hours trying to get an answer to a question, and instead of getting more clarity and more confidence in what our decision making should be, we're more anxious and we're more confused. And we just choose something, we say, okay, we're going to do it. But instead of making a decision and going, this is my decision, we still carry that anxiety of, was this the right decision? Should we have done something else? Should we go back? And so that leaves us weak, vulnerable, overwhelmed, exhausted, and not in a good, strong, clear, confident parenting place. Where does our lack of clarity come from in our society? It comes from not living in homogeneous societies anymore. And that's really great for so many reasons, right? I love living in the Bay Area. I love living in multi-ethnic communities. I'm married to an Indian. That perspective, that different way of doing things has enriched my life so much. And at the same time, it's not as easy. If you live in a society where everybody is doing the same thing, you don't have to question whether or not what you're doing is right. You just do it. We don't have that luxury around here because we have people coming from all over the world with all sorts of different perspectives on what is right when it comes to parenting. So if we're looking around for answers, we don't get an answer that goes, just, oh, check, that's right. Also, we tend not to live near our parents anymore. So we tend not to have that immediate check-in. And, you know, I've talked to people whose parents live outside the country, and even if their parents give them advice, they end up feeling like, well, but mom, you don't get it. Like, you're not here. You don't live in the United States. You don't get what it's like to live here and what kids are experiencing here and what I'm hearing from the other parents. So whereas I'm sure your advice is very good advice for home, it doesn't feel like good advice here. So our parents, who should be this wonderful source and support for us, somehow that feels more stressful, or can feel more of a strain. So between not living in homogeneous communities, not living with our extended family nearby, having access to the internet, and going into the bookstore and finding 6 feet of parenting books on the shelf, right? There's so much to choose from. How do you choose? I always laugh because my company is called Joyful Parenting Coaching. Well, why am I joyful parenting? Is that better than peaceful parenting or conscious parenting or positive parenting? Right? There are a lot of different messages. And I will tell you that the good news is that when you actually get a set of parenting professionals in a room together and we're just talking and we're not trying to market anything, there's a ton of agreement about what is good for kids. People have different strengths and they come at it through different lenses, but we're tending to land the same place. So I find that comforting when I talk to other parenting professionals and when I look at research. So let me give you an example of why clarity is so important. I had a client who came to a session and she was so upset because everybody in her family was mad at her. The older daughter had a piano recital on Friday night, and the younger daughter came up at the end of school and said, "Mom, Mom, 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 Sarah has invited me to her house to spend the night." And Mom was like, "But it's your sister's piano concert tonight." And I'm sorry, you guys. I told Connie earlier that my husband has gassed the house. He's burned the fish, and it's like hot red chili pepper, and I can hardly breathe. Okay, so here's Mom with the older daughter ready to go to her piano concert recital that night. Younger daughter going, "I want to go to Sarah's." Older daughter is thinking, Mom is thinking, we were going to have a nice evening. We were all going to go to the recital. After the recital, we were going to go have a treat. It was going to be a good family evening. But here's my younger daughter, and she's so excited, and she's getting to see her friend finally. And, and she said, "Well, I think we really should support your sister. We should go to your sister's concert." And her younger daughter said, "But Mom, it's not my concert, and I don't care about piano, and I don't see why I should go to her stupid recital when I could go to my friend's house. It's not like I need to hear her play." And so the mom ended up saying yes. And then she called her husband and she told her husband what she did. And her husband was like, "That's ridiculous. Why did you do that? We were going to have this family evening." And the mom was thinking like, "Oh my God, why did I do that?" And she ended up saying her daughter couldn't go on the field trip, on the sleepover, and so then her daughter was really mad at her, and then she came to the concert, but was it a nice family evening? No, because the younger daughter was like grumpy and mad and like, "I'm not gonna go," or you can make me go, but you don't have to make me like it the whole time. So let's rewrite this scene. Let's say that Mom and Dad had really gone through and explored their values and explored what was important to them and had created policies ahead of time. So when Mom and I finally talked this through, Mom was like, "I actually think it's really important that we support each other and we go to each other's things because it feels good to have your family there and you've worked hard and you want to be recognized." And I said, when you just said that right there, that sounded clear and it sounded convincing. So what's the value? Being there for each other, supporting each other, celebrating each other. And what's the policy going to be? And so she came to a decision that in our family, we support each other. In our family, we celebrate each other and we are there for each other's big moments. And she was able to go home and sit her girls down and say, you know what? I messed up because I should not have said you could go to Sarah's sleepover. I should have made clear that it was important that you went to your sister's recital. And guess what? From now on, this is what our policy is going to be. So when we are clear on something, it gives us confidence. It allows us to make decisions quickly and easily. I have one other example of a moment that I just loved. I was picking up my nephew from soccer, and as we walked off the soccer field, my nephew was around 8, there were two big boys, I think they were probably around 14, walking onto the field. And I could see my nephew looking at them, these big, strong, athletic boys. And the one boy said to the other boy, dude, we had a game on Sunday and you weren't there. And the other one looked, he looked like a prince. He was so regal. And he turned to his friend and he said, we don't play games on Sunday. And that was all he had to say. He just said it in this tone that was just like, this is, this is the law. And his friend backed off and he's like, oh, that's cool. Okay, I'm sorry. And you can imagine if the first boy hadn't been clear that this was his family's policy and that this was a good part of being in his family. If he hadn't been clear, what would his reaction have been? It would have been more like, yeah, I know, sorry. I had this dumb stuff I had to do with my family. But would that have felt good to him? No, he would have felt like he let his team down. He would have felt embarrassed. He would have also felt that he was betraying his family and that maybe he shouldn't like being with his family and like the fact that his family was clear that Sunday was a family day. So when we're not clear, we're more vulnerable. We don't stick up for what things happen. We're more likely to have conflict. So our first really important step is being clear. How would I like you to address this? I would love for you to go home and to start a list. Start a list of values, of things that are important to you. Don't write on the list what you think should be on the list because it's somebody else's value. Somebody else thinks you should be X, Y, or Z. Write down what is actually important to you. Values are personal, right? Somebody else might have a value of beauty. I'm not a visual learner at all. I'm like, I see a painting and I like it, but it doesn't speak to me. My husband, I drive him nuts because he'll be like, oh, we have to clean this, we have to clean this. And I'll be like, what? And he'll be like, look at that, it's dirty. I'll be like, oh, okay, it's dirty. Not a value of mine. I don't see whether or not there's scuff marks on the wall. The fact that he does is fine. That's his value. And I asked him once, I was like, why do you like everything to be so clean and tidy and neat? And he's like, because that's when I can think. And it allows me to get my ideas out and to be expansive. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny because I'm just the opposite. Like I can think and be creative when I've got scraps of ideas here and something over there to inspire me here. And if everything's neat and tidy and all put away, it makes me feel constrained. So being clear about your values and what's important to you is going to cut down on the number of conflicts you have. It's going to give you a deeper understanding of your motivations. Not, again, why we think we should be doing something, but why you're truly doing something and what's important. And when you and your spouse, your parent or your parenting partner can communicate that to each other, that ability to parent from one page gets much stronger. And when your kids feel that clarity, they feel you are in agreement And that doesn't mean you have to agree with everything, but it means that you understand each other and have come to a place of understanding about what your policy is going to be. That helps your kids feel secure. They know where they can push, where they can't push. They know where they have wiggle room to negotiate and where they shouldn't even try. Okay, our next pillar is connection. And if there is one silver bullet to parenting, it is connection. Are you guys familiar with the parenting styles of authoritative, authoritarian, permissive parenting a little bit? Okay, so I
Little.
want you to picture a line where the point in the middle is authoritative parenting. And going off one direction is parenting. In this direction, we're looking at parenting in terms of warmth. How much warmth is there? And in this direction, we're looking at how clear are the expectations? How high are the expectations? And what we're trying to do is to come to the center. We want to come to that balance between as much warmth as possible, whereas at the same time we are holding high expectations for our kids. When we only have high expectations, that's called authoritarian parenting. It's very top down. That's the because I said so. That parent cares so much about performance that they are willing to put aside the relationship with the child in order to get performance measures. And kids who have authoritarian parents can be very high performing, very successful, very high performing. They are also the group which suffer the most anxiety, depression, and suicide, which means there's a very high cost to not balancing high expectations with warmth. At the other end, where we have parents who care very deeply about warmth and connection and probably physical affection, there's a lot of warmth, connection, and physical affection. So there may be a lot of happiness in that way, but it actually leaves children feeling very insecure, and they can have low self-esteem because their parent has never pushed them to anything, has never held any expectations for them. They don't tend to master anything, so they don't get that feeling of competency. And when we're talking about kids and self-esteem really comes from this balance of I am liked, that's the high warmth, and I am capable. I am able to do things. So if we have just warmth and no expectations, kids can feel loved, but they don't have efficacy. They don't have power in the world because they haven't learned how to organize themselves and how to actually work and how to actually to do something. Now, this is research that has come out of the 1960s. So it's been research that's been done over and over and over. That sweet spot is called authoritative. It's very frustrating to me that authoritarian and authoritative are so similar. But authoritative parenting, it's the balance. Subsequent research has shown that if we have to choose between leaning more towards permissive or learning more towards high expectations, people have better outcomes if we're slightly more towards the warm and the connection. And this is one of the reasons. One of the reasons is that we know from studies of education and in classroom interactions that if what they call the affective filter is up, if a child is scared or feels unsafe or feels attacked or underappreciated, then they shield themselves. And if that affective filter is up and they're pushing teacher away, the learning doesn't go in. So in order to have a child have a sense of self-worth, you can think about leaning more that way. But really, we're trying to find that balance. So authoritative parenting has the quality or characteristic of, yes, I'm holding a clear expectation for something, but I'm going to bring the child to that standard with a lot of warmth, empathy, support, faith that you're going to get there, right? It doesn't have to be, you need to be over here. It's more like, right now you're struggling. You're struggling with your math facts, but that's okay. We're going to work on them. We're going to get there. We're going to see if we can find different ways to practice them. You will learn your math facts. We'll just keep working at it. Don't worry about it. Do a little bit today, we'll do a little bit tomorrow, right? So instead of saying you sit down, you do this, right? You have no value or worth until you have learned your math facts. It's more of a sense of, we have this clear goal. We know you're going to get there. But it's okay if it's messy getting there, if it's not a straight line. Okay, so one of my rules for families is that we put relationships before issues. We put the relationship before the issue. That means if you are in conflict with your kid and it's getting hot and heated and heavy and you are getting out of control, you step back and you maintain that connection and you say, kiddo, this over here is a problem, whatever it is. And Connie's in my middle school mom's Facebook group. And she knows from my middle school mom's Facebook group, the issues are serious. We've been talking vaping, we've been talking dress code, we've been talking pornography, we've been talking big, scary things. But if we're dealing with a kid about those things, we want to be side by side with our child, looking at the issue, going, that is a problem over there, right? Being addicted is a problem. Watching pornography is a problem. Being bullied or bullying somebody else is a problem. But I am your parent, and we are a team, and together we are going to figure out how to solve that problem. So one of the ways that we keep connections is that we separate the behavior from the child, right? So with little kids, and one of the ways we do that is with our language. So instead of saying our child is bossy, our child is shy, our child is whatever, loud, pushy, rambunctious, trying to think of a more negative thing, out of control, we say the behavior is out of control, or we give modifiers. Right now, your behavior is out of control. Right now, your behavior is not acceptable. Not you are not acceptable, but your behavior is not acceptable, right? So as parents, we maintain connection. We still need standards. We still need expectations. I still have an expectation that my child is going to learn to behave a certain way. Like, I'm going to have the expectation that I can go to the grocery store with my child and have my child not melt down. Now, I know I might not get there today, right? If I've got a 2-year-old, I might not be able to get that today, but I'm going to hold that expectation and I'm going to work with the child on it. And that's how I'm going to talk about it to the child, right? Pulling every cereal box off of the shelf is not okay. That is not okay behavior, right? So you and I are going to work on how to go to the grocery store and how we need to behave in the grocery store. Okay, so are we going to pull cereal boxes off the shelves? No, we're not going to do that. We're going to do constructive things. We're going to be helpful in the store. Can you be helpful? Yes. Give mommy a big hug. Right? So I'm going to keep that connection even while I'm saying this is not acceptable behavior. I'm keeping the connection. All right. Part of the reason connection is hard today, a couple reasons. One is all children are spending less physical time with their parents. Now, COVID aside, right? But if we think, January 2020, kids were at childcare, at school, at activities. We were at work. And even when we weren't at work, we were responsive to work. We were answering texts. We were sending quick emails. We were taking a phone call, right? So it's funny because studies look at things and they say, parents are spending more time, more minutes a day with their kids than they were, say, in the 1950s. And I think, no way. That is not true. Because when we are driving in the car and our kids have their earphones on and they're absorbed with their iPads or their phones, and we're not interacting with them, it doesn't count. Like, that's not quality time. When we are sitting next to the soccer field and they are playing soccer, and again, we're on our phones, it doesn't count. My husband was terrible about this. He used to schedule calls during soccer games because it was efficient. Like, the kids were entertained and he could walk up and down the soccer field and take a call. Okay, that is not connection. Now, I'm not saying that we should feel guilty, and I'm not saying that we can, that only quantity time counts. We can do a great deal with quality time. And in fact, that is what we need to do. We need to be more deliberate about how we connect with our kids. Part of living in homogeneous societies was that we tended to have religious institutions which provided a lot of regularity and ritual. And that regularity and ritual acted like an anchor for families and gave families opportunities to bond. My family growing up, we weren't particularly religious, but we did go to church. And every week after church, we went to lunch. And when we sat at lunch, my parents would say, well, what did the minister say today? What was the topic? What was he talking about? What was the point of it? And we had a 10-15 minute conversation about what it was, which is a conversation about character, about values, about how do we want to show up in the world, about what's important in the world. And that routine helped to define us. It helped to bond us together as a family. It helped to define for us kids what's important. What do our parents really care about? And it was easy for my parents to do that because there was a building where we all went and a service that started at the same time and a routine that the whole town was kind of doing. And so nobody else was trying to schedule a soccer game on a Sunday morning. So they didn't feel torn. Should we be taking our kids to church or should we be going to the soccer game? We just did it. Everybody was doing it. And so again, when we go back to clarity, it was easier, but it also gave us these built-in ways to connect. So now parents have to be more creative about how to do it. And they really have to block out some clear family time. And then it has to be sacrosanct. And here's the hard part. Nobody's going to give you a gold star for being really clear about your family time. Because inevitably, if you decide that Saturday afternoon is your family time, you're going to miss a lot of birthday parties. And a lot of other parents are going to be like, well, what do you mean Johnny can't come to Susie's party? Susie will be so sad. She really wants Johnny to be there. We're going to have a jumpy house, It's going to be a lot of fun. And if that's the response you're getting, it's very hard to say, I'm sure it's going to be a lovely party. Thank you for the invitation. But that's our family time, right? You're going to, unless you've really done the work of being clear and of drawing this line around that time and knowing that that is what's keeping your family connected, your kids anchored and feeling like they are a unit. You're going to have to be really clear about that, or you're going to feel guilty, you're going to feel put upon, you're going to feel stressed. One of the ways that we can connect with kids is to focus on the positive, right? A lot of our time with our kids is directive and often in a critical way. Have you done your homework? You need to feed the dog. You haven't cleared the table yet. Hey, it's your day to take out the garbage. What? Put on your shoes. Where are your shoes? Go brush your teeth. You did not brush your teeth, right? If we had a recorder in our house and then we went back and we had to slide it to, is this essentially directive or critical in nature, or is this positive and warm and connected? Most households would have about 80 to 90% on the directive, we have an agenda, we need to get things done side. And that's really hard. That's really wearing. And we've got so little time in the day as it is to connect with our kids. We really do. Okay. So, pillar number one, clarity. When we're clear, it gives us confidence. When we have rituals and routines for connection and we really keep in mind, I am on the same team as my kid. We have a problem here that needs solving, but we are a family. We're the team. And we're going to solve this together. Those two pillars give us strength for the last pillar. And the last pillar is consistency. And why is consistency so important? Because it is about trust. We teach our children to trust in the world. And when we trust the world, we can go out into it in a bold way. So when we keep our promises, when we meet our children's needs, whether that is for holding a limit or for keeping a promise of something nice, that's what builds up their sense of trust and their sense of safety and security in the world. And when we feel safe and secure, we are our better selves. We are able to be braver, stronger, more generous, right? More open in the world, because we trust that our needs are going to be met. And we feel secure about that. It's easy for us to share. It's easy for us to be generous. So this is why consistency becomes so important, because it's part of this trust equation. Now, I'm not going to ask you to say this out loud, but I want you to think in your head on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is, I follow through 100%. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. If I say this is the consequence, that is the consequence. If I say, yes, we can read 3 books tonight, no matter how tired, irritated, and done with the day I am, I read the 3 books because I said I was going to read them. So I want you to think in your head, are you that? Are you a 10? Or maybe you're at the other end. Now, I always say, parents say to me, oh, I have such a hard time being consistent. I can't be consistent. And my question for them always is, do you let your child drive in the car without a seatbelt or not in the car seat? And when I ask that question, I've never once had a parent go like, yeah, I do. Now, sometimes I get caveats like, well, in the United States, I don't. In the United States, I'm 100% consistent. Like, sometimes at home, we don't need to, or it's not important. There's not a rule there. But the fact that there is a rule here and they follow the rule 100% means they can be a consistent parent when they are absolutely clear about it and they absolutely know what they're doing. And this is how clarity connects back again to the idea of consistency. Clarity helps us be consistent because when we know in our hearts this is important to us, this is worth fighting the fight, we are going to do this, then we do it, right? It's much harder to be consistent about the things we don't know if we care about, right? Like, I don't know. I think I have a hard time with sugar, right? Sometimes I would go on, like, we need to be better about sugar, Jags, and we're going to do this. But the kids basically knew that sugar is a big weakness of mine and that all they had to do was really push and poke and prod. And I would be like, well, okay, just a little, just this once, maybe just tonight. It wasn't something that I had a lot of clarity about. So if you're struggling with your consistency, I want you to start by first being consistent about the positive things. Or being consistent about things that your kids don't necessarily follow through on. And if you don't tell them, I'm going to start being consistent about this, then, if you're not and you lose it and you don't go back to square one, you just kind of lose the day. But if you think in your head, all right, if I say to them that they can do X after dinner, or we'll stop by the park on the way home after school, I am not going to let my own needs or my own agenda get in the way of that. I am going to prioritize that. And if you've spent 2 or 3 weeks holding your positive promises, first of all, you get to exercise that consistency muscle at a time when it's not so critical, right? When they have done something that you do not want them to do, and you've said if you do it, there's going to be a consequence, then if you don't hold the consequence, you've really lost a lot of ground, haven't you? You've really lost faith. They know where your weaknesses are. So you start slowly, start with the positive. Keep it simple. Don't promise them the sun and the moon and the stars, right? Just start with something you know you can deliver on. Now, one of the fun things is that we can do this by doing when-then kinds of things. Like, kids, the playroom is looking disastrous. But when we all work together and get it cleaned up in the next 10 minutes, I would still have 15 minutes to play Hello Kitties is the prevailing thing with my nieces and nephews this summer. Hello Kitties was the big one. But whatever game or whatever activities that they like to do. Now, you say, when we can get it cleaned up in 10 minutes, I will have 15 minutes to do that. You set the timer for 15 minutes. No matter how much they help or don't help, if the playroom gets cleaned up in that 15 minutes, then you play. If it doesn't, then you say, oh, well, we ran out of time, maybe another time. But there's no lecture. There's no, you should have helped me. If you'd helped me, we would have gotten it done. Then I would have had time to play with you. No, because we're not trying to make them feel bad. We're trying to build our consistency muscle. We're trying to practice putting in a standard and holding it. When you help out and you do this, by X time, I will be able to give you this. If not, doesn't matter. No harm, no foul. And that's an important idea because it enables you to practice it. It says make expectations transferable. When we connect our expectations to a value, we then don't need 100 discrete rules. We have one rule and we're consistent with it. So for instance, in our family, we are safe. That might be a rule that you have. But then you get to say, what does that look like and sound like? What does being safe look like and sound like? And if you ask your kids, sorry, excuse me. I feel like I'm squeaking at you guys. Uh, if you ask your kids, what does it look like to be safe? They may say, hold mommy's hand crossing the parking lot, wear your helmet when you go on your scooter, sit down in the bathtub, don't put your hand outside the car window, um, carry scissors with the tip down, right? They actually know a lot of rules to be safe. And instead of harping on all those individual things, if we treat this idea of safety, we build it up with our kids in a very powerful way. And then we can say to our kids, are you being safe? Or what needs to happen to have this be safe right now? And in that way, we get away from some of that nagging interaction. Because what needs to happen has a different affect, a different feel than you need to go put your helmet on. You get off that scooter. You can't wear your scooter without your helmet, right? We're building up this one idea, and it gives them a chance to prove competency and to take action themselves because they can meet the concept of being safe. Okay. My memory, Connie, was that we were going to go about 45 minutes and then we were going to leave time for questions. Is that what you said?
Yeah, 40, 45 minutes. Yep.
Okay. So we've gone beyond that. So I will, I'm going to stop unless there's anything about this in particular. I'm going to stop the share and just open it up and see what kinds of questions people have about these three ideas and how they support each other.
Can we ask about anything else?
Sure.
Okay. So I haven't read that many parenting books. One of the few that I read, because it was very short and highly, I guess, reviewed on Amazon, was called 1, 2, 3 Magic. I think that's what it's called. And I'm wondering if that's authoritative or authoritarian in terms of a method. And it actually did work pretty well for us. When my daughter was 2, it still works when we say that's 1, that's 2. Although she now asks, what happens, if I don't do it? Like, what happens when you count to 3? but oddly enough, it still works. But I'm wondering what you think in general of that type of method.
So here's kind of a general rule.
Mm-hmm.
Children feel safe when they know what to expect. And so there may be, if I have a parent who is a little bit on the not warm side and is maybe a little bit strict, but is the same way day in, day out, sometimes that a child can feel more comfortable with that parent than the parent who's like lovey-dovey, it's all fun, but then they get to the end of their tether and they've had it. And now all of a sudden they're yelling at their kids or they're calling their kids names because, you guys are ungrateful, you're slobs, you don't ever think about anybody. Because they've lost it. They've been patient, but they gave too much away of themselves, basically. And now they're upset because their kids don't listen and their kids are never satisfied. That is less good, right? So the thing that 1, 2, 3 Magic has is that it has a lot of clarity and a lot of consistency. It can be done with connection, but as I kind of read it, that's where I would put a little bit more. I would like the author of 1, 2, 3 Magic to talk more about how to keep the warmth and the empathy and the respect and the connection there while at the same time being clear. And here's the other way to answer this, Mary. Each child has their own personality. So each child has some children have a much stronger need for autonomy and control, and other children have a higher need for pleasing and for feeling that they are approved of. So if you have a child who has a high need for approval, then this works for them because they know I behave. When my mom says 1, I know that I'm at the edge of not behaving, and I'm going to pull back and I'm going to behave. And then I'm going to get my mom's approval again. And that makes them feel safe and secure, and they feel comfortable with that. But the child who has a very strong need to do things themselves, to explore things themselves, to be in control of things themselves, when you say 1, 2, 3, you're sort of throwing fire on the flame, because you're going 1, 2, 3, and the child's just going, well, what? Prove it to me. So any method that we use has to be a little bit done within the context of the child that we have in front of us.
Yep. Okay.
Right. So for some children it works. Like so my youngest is 23. When I had a 3-year-old, timeouts were what we were taught to do. And the thing about a timeout was that if it was done, the part about 1, 2, 3 magic that works is that it's because you have a clear policy, you're just matter of fact about it, right? I'm not, and this is the analogy I use. When you are riding in the high occupancy vehicle lane by yourself, when the officer pulls you over, the officer doesn't come up and say, Mary, what were you doing in the high occupancy vehicle lane? You know better than that. You should be ashamed of yourself, Mary. He doesn't do that. The officer says, ma'am, you were driving in the high occupancy vehicle lane after 3 o'clock. That's a $256 fine. Here's your ticket. Right? The delivery is just that. They trust that the $256 minimum fine is going to do the job of going, yeah, I don't want to behave that way again. Right? So 1, 2, 3 magic works when we have a clearly stated rule, right? 3 to 7 p.m., 2 or more people. And then when the person chooses to do it anyway, they take that risk. The delivery is like the consequence. This is the consequence. It's clear. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. It is helpful to know when we should try to understand how the child thinks and how they tend to think. I'm not sure what the question is. Is the question, is it helpful to... Doreen, do you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
Sorry, I was on mute and I was typing and I was talking to my child at the same time. But it was also a comment because so many of your statements are make me feel like, oh, I should be gentler on the child when I am confronting certain things. Like, okay, I wanted you to do that and you didn't do it. So I can see a lot of pushback because take out the crayons and then color, Avnish. So sorry. So this is one of the few things we off late that we're having, getting that pushback, because there's this question, like you said, what happens if I don't do it? What happens if I push it down? So one of the things that we are facing right now is getting him to, we think we're trying to teach him a new skill, but the child just will not do it. And after a while, we'll be like, I'm working so hard, why can't you just do it? And then it becomes a question, the child has no clue how to react. So my brain realizes I shouldn't do it, but in that moment I just say those things. Is there some how else can we kind of control? Is there something, just the way we teach kids, okay, take a deep breath, before you throw a tantrum, think about it. Think, in that kind of situations, how do you, start off with the child? Because I know that's like a non-preferred activity, learning to ride a bike. So should I set a precedent? Should I prep the child beforehand?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mhm.
I have a whole other webinar I call Setting Your Kids Up for Success.
Mhm.
And a big concept behind setting your kids up for success is anticipating what the experience is going to be like, being respectful about explaining why you feel that it's important, and then
Mm.
in today's society, there is some room to negotiate, if not the end goal, to negotiate how we're going to get to that goal. So,
Mm.
I might say something to my child like, uh, I know you don't think that you want to ride your bike right now, or that you're
Mhm.
ready to learn to ride a bike, but it is important to know how to ride a bike because later on you're going to need to ride your bike to school. And
Mm.
uh, and it's a good skill to have. We would like to be able to go bike riding as a family, and I know right now you think you don't want to do it. I also know that riding a bike is fun, and that when you're able to do it, you're going to think that it's fun. I feel confident of that. So
Mm.
confident that I'm willing to ask you to work on it. Now it's okay. You don't have to learn to ride the bike 100% today. But sweetheart, we need to start working on it. So what would be a good first step to working on it? And you basically get the kid to commit to something,
Mm.
right? Maybe
Okay. Mhm.
they're willing to sit on the bike and practice lifting their feet up and down. And
Right.
and then you can be encouraging and warm and connected. You can go like, I'm so proud of you. That's a great start.
Mm.
Would be how many times would you be willing to do that? Could you do it 10 times? No. Well, how about 7? No,
Mm.
5. Okay, 5 times? All right, so this afternoon you are committing to sitting on your bike and practicing lifting your feet 5 times. So, what's our deal? You always ask for them to say it back.
Ah.
I'm going to sit on my bike, I'm going to lift it 5 times.
Okay.
And then, this is key, this is really key. Then you say,
Mhm.
okay, so if we get out there this afternoon and you don't do it the 5 times, how do you want mommy to be about that?
Ah.
And when you first start asking this, they'll be like, huh?
Right.
What do you mean? And
Mhm.
you'll be like, look, sweetheart, you just told me you were willing to try 5 times. Agreement that you and I have made. And just the way that mommy follows through on her promises,
Mhm.
make sure that you've been consistent because that's your credibility.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Just the way mommy follows through on her
Mhm.
promises, you've just made an agreement with me, and it's important to me that you keep that agreement.
Mm.
So if you don't keep that agreement, that's going to hurt our relationship.
Mm.
So what if that doesn't happen? How do you want me to be about that? How do you want me to respond?
Okay.
And very often they come up with a good idea. They'll say something like, well, you know, I'll apologize. And you'll be like, okay, I'll appreciate that you apologize, but you can't just apologize every time.
Mm.
What could you do? And you say, well, I could walk next to my bike, or I could walk my bike around and get used to walking my bike around. Or I could just, right? They have to give you something. And at some
Okay.
point they can just make it up to you for just taking your energy,
Mm.
right? Like if you
Yeah.
have to remind them and nag them and get them to do it, that takes a lot of our energy. And at some point
True.
they get up to it. And
Yes.
you can come up with your own way of what that looks like to you. Now, for me, that looks like, with an older child, it looks like the delivery of hot tea. My children know that they can erase a world of sins. If they have let me down in some way, if they have required me to nag them, if they have not kept their commitments, if they show up with a cup of hot tea and an apology, I am like so happy and thankful to have that brought to me. That's my, let's say that's my love language, as they would say, right? That's like, okay, I feel all better now. So you figure out what genuinely makes you feel better. Because when you figure that out and you can articulate that to your kids and offer it to them as something they can make up to you, that genuinely erases the resentment. And then you have the connection. And now you guys are both in a good place to problem solve for next time. Right? Or maybe, because you've been gentle about it, it opens the child up to the conversation of, well, you weren't holding my bike steady enough. And I was scared. And so then maybe you're coming back and going like, so you're telling me that you didn't pick your feet up and down like you said you would because you thought I wasn't holding your bike steadily enough. Let's go back and look at that. Right? Because at the end of the day, we're a family and we work together and we support each other. And the goal is important, but it's not more important than the relationship. So it doesn't mean we give it up and we go, oh, well, but we can go back to the drawing board. But that doesn't mean going back to the drawing board in the middle of the night when they need 10 million glasses of water, right? It's like, but we have to have done the work ahead of time. We have to have had the conversation with them and gotten the feedback. Otherwise, we get into the situation and we don't know. We don't know where to hold them accountable because we're not sure if we've been clear. Okay, I can do one more question and then I'm going to go have my dinner. If there are more questions.
You mentioned in the beginning that for the preteen years to go back to doing similar things as we did as when they were toddlers.
Yeah.
So
that can look like, right? Remember when they're toddlers, we empowered them by offering them choice, but we were still holding an expectation, right? Mm-hmm. So good night, Mary. Thank you. Thank you for being on camera. I really appreciate that. So, right, when they were little kids, it was like, do you want to put on your shoes first or your jacket first? Mm-hmm. Do you want your red cup or your blue cup? With a 7th grader, it can be, are you going to do your math homework and then walk the dog? Or are you going to walk the dog and then do your math homework? Like, I'm holding this expectation, dog and math homework. But I'm going to not sit there and say, you have to dock the dog. Don't forget, you have to do it, right? I'm not shaking my finger by offering choice. I'm offering power. Or even broader, like the advanced level for a 12-year-old is, what's your plan for getting your homework done and the dog walks before dinner?
So my daughter is pretty good about doing the things that she knows that needs to be done. And then the other things that are not as important, like cleaning her room for weeks on weeks. I mean, I have expectations for her, but I know that I guess some things I'm pretty consistent about making sure that she does. And then there are some things that I kind of let go too. And then she knows that I will let go.
Okay, so look, that's like being the chocolate, right? When we're not clear, it's much harder. So I would go to her and I would say, sweetheart, I realize that I've kind of been half nagging you to clean your room, but I haven't followed through on nagging your room. And now I'm realizing that it's becoming a hazardous waste zone, and I need to be super clear about this. So what agreement can we come to? could you have it cleaned by Sunday at 5 o'clock? Yeah, okay, Mom, fine. I'll clean my room. So at Sunday at 5 o'clock, what is your room going to look like? Mom, I told you I would clean it up. It would be clean. I know, but I want us to have a clear agreement so that you and I agree that it's clean. So what is that going to look like? Mom, I know how to clean a room. The clothes will be in a hamper. My bed will be made. The books will be on the bookshelf, and I'll have vacuumed. And, and then you might throw in and all the dirty dishes. Yes, Mom, obviously I'm going to put the dishes in the sink. And I'll take them to the kitchen. And the garbage, yes, I'm going to take the garbage out. Okay, so could we go through that again? Mom, I will vacuum. I will empty the waste paper basket. I will remove all the dishes to the sink. I will make my bed. All the clothes will be in the laundry hamper, and the books will be on the bookshelves. Okay, so that's what the room is going to look like by 5 o'clock on Sunday. And if it doesn't, how do you want me to be about that? Mom, I'm going to clean it. Thank you. I know you're going to clean it. If it's not clean, how do you want me to be about that? Well, I can clean it then. Well, sweetheart, then isn't by 5 o'clock, and you're making this agreement that we're going to have it by 5 o'clock. So to me, that doesn't feel fair. If you agree 5 o'clock, and I still have to nag you about it, or we still have to have a conversation about it, how do you want me to be about that? Because I'm thinking I'm going to be angry. Well, Mom, I'm just going to do it. I know that you're going to do it. Absolutely know you're going to do it. And at the same time, what do you want to have happen? Or how would you make it up to me if it requires extra nagging and conversation? Ugh. I'll help you change the beds. Okay, so my understanding is that if your room is not clean by 5 o'clock on Sunday, you are going to help me change all the sheets and all the beds. Great, I can live with that. And then, if it's 5 o'clock on Sunday, now you think, but how am I going to get her to get me to make the sheets, to change the sheets in the bed? Well, that's easy, because you don't change the sheets of the bed until she wants something from you. And so now she wants you to take it. Now it's Monday afternoon and she wants you to take her to the mall. Or to take her to Michael's to buy poster board for her project. And you say, I would love to take you to Michael's, just as soon as we have changed all the sheets on the bed. But Mom, I have to go. Michael's is going to close. Oh dear. Well, let's do it really fast. Mom, we're never going to make it. Well, we could try. Mom, we didn't make it. Well, I'm really sorry. I guess next time you'll clean your room. And then you don't say anything more because she's a smart girl. And she knows she doesn't need the lecture. She just needs the ticket. Here's the fine, the $256 fine. The fine is you didn't uphold your end of the bargain, so I'm shut down. Like, you're not getting anything else to me until you have made that up, until you've paid that fine. Okay, guys, I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
Or not going to bed. I'm going to get my dinner, and I'm going to bed.
Thank you.
Yeah, Connie, will you send out
Recording.
information to everybody?
Yes.
Yes, and let people know that they can send me follow-up questions. That's fine.
Thank you. And I'll check with everybody to see if it's okay to send their information to you too. Their email address.
Yes. Yeah. So people who are on the call and people who are listening to the call, I do put out a regular newsletter. And Connie, are you on my newsletter list?
I am not.
Okay. Send me your email and I'll put you on the newsletter list. And if you are a middle school mom, the Middle School Moms Facebook group is a vibrant, happening place with a lot of support. People are really jumping in. So
Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth.
you're very welcome. Good
Have a
night.
good night, everyone. Thank you.